Hello, hello. I didn't hear back from my job interview last week yet, so either they haven't picked me or they're taking a little bit to respond. And so in the meantime, I'm still applying to other jobs. One of them I'm not too excited to apply to, but it is still a career option. And trying to take a little bit of a break from doing that, from doom scrolling on YouTube and from all that sort of fun stuff. Uh, there's a thought that I have when it comes to why I'm so cynical. And I think the quote that best fits this is, "And every cynic is a disappointed optimist." You know, that idea that you have such high hopes for a better world or for a better situation or for an ideal situation that reality kind of does nothing but disappoint you. I think is the reason why it's so easy to be cynical. And I think that's the reason why, even though metrically and marginally your situations can improve, it's still easy to look at your situations negatively. I think there is value in cynicism, but I also don't think it's the end all be all. And I think the biggest disappointment in life that you have to kind of learn to deal with as an adult is when you realize how callous the world is and why the world is so callous. And I think to me, the expectation to be so self-interested to where I'm just not really supposed to be concerned about other people's problems is what bothers me the most. Because I see plenty of people with a similar mentality, but they still pay attention to other people. They just dismiss their suffering, where they hear about a thing happening and they just act like it's another Tuesday, or they very easily accept bad things happening until it directly pertains to them. And I think that's the biggest flaw that we have as a species is this idea that if something doesn't relate to me right now, then it is not a problem for me. Because I think it prevents a lot of conversations. I think it prevents a lot of people from caring. And I think it allows people to be elevated when they encourage this way of thinking. I get very upset because in my age, I'm almost 30 years old. Yeah, I cannot afford to buy a house. I don't know if I will ever be able to afford to buy a house. No matter what job I get, unless if I get something very well paying, because I may not be so fortunate as to have a very successful channel or book. I might be, but I'm not expecting it or planning on it. This is merely a hobby of mine. So for me, career-wise, it's mostly $15 to $25 an hour options, and most of them don't really reply or reply quickly. Maybe $30 an hour, and homes that would be 4 to 12 times my annual salary in most places around me. And interest rates that would make it to where by the end of your mortgage, you're paying 2 to 2.5 times the original cost of the house. If you buy, I think I saw it somewhere, if you bought like a $500,000 or $600,000 house with current interest rates, if you paid according to the 30-year plan or 25-year plan, one of the two, By the end of it, you're paying over $1 million for your house, which is about as much as pretty much people earn. And the mortgages would be about the same, if not more expensive than rent. So it's not really necessarily a cheaper option, even if I have a good down payment. It's very discouraging. And so when people say things like just work harder, that frustrates me. Because one, most of the people who say that are people who make millions of dollars sitting on their ass, giving their opinions. I would love to sit on my ass and make millions of dollars giving my opinions. I'd love to be a Ben Shapiro, somebody who can just be worth $40 million to just insult college students who don't know that much about politics or the world, or to logically slam dunk on people who maybe haven't had as much time to think about their opinions and are being put on the spot while you have carefully curated arguments and paths for, like, I would love to do that because that would be a relatively easy job for me. I think I'd be very good at it, but I'm not in a position to be. And because I don't say the things that encourage people to not care about others, I think my messages, if they were to get out, would only be listened to by some people. And I think about how people can look at me and say I need to work harder, and say I just need to do more, and say that I'm not grateful and that I have it easy and blah, blah, blah. And then I look at what those same people are willing to say about others. You know, if you make a mistake, you might not have long-term consequences for that mistake. You may not have to pay for it the rest of your life, but some people do, and life's not fair. And it's almost as if we are very willing to forget that life isn't fair, and life doesn't treat people fairly, and some people do have it easier than others, and some people have it harder than others. Just to make us feel better about the things that we have. I could sit here and tell you that I work really hard, that I have worked really hard, and there are moments where I have worked really hard. There are also moments where I haven't really had to do that much, and I still got paid. There's a lot of people that have done a lot more to have less than me. There are people that would go through my house and have gone through my house and told me that I had a lot of really nice things, and I still have a savings account. I was still able to save money somewhat. And yes, I could have slowed down the spending, but ultimately that would only lead to all of the stuff that I do have would probably only amount to an extra $5,000 in my savings account over the past 7 years, maybe. So not too much. A lot of this nice stuff I have were gifts, and they're small things and things that I found on a discount, or they're collections of things that I bought over a long period of time where it was a $5 thing here, a $10 thing here, a $20 thing here, maybe the occasional $50 every few months on a nice little deal of things. It never broke the bank. I never worried about paying for it. I never had to worry about paying for it. But I think about how much harder I can and could have worked. And I think about where that would take me, how long I would have to do it, and what I would get out of it. And basically, the answer I get is maybe working a second job and having every dollar from that second job go towards some sort of investment that might, over the course of 10 to 15 years, appreciate into $200,000+. It's a good bit of money for a lot of people, but it's not really a lot compared to some people who can make that easily in 1 year, or some people who just get put in positions where they get paid a lot of money, or people who have a big enough audience on the internet can just get paid a ridiculous sum of money on a monthly basis because they've managed to harbor an audience. It's the attention that gets some of these people the amount of money that they have. It's why so many of our billionaires care that you think of them as being smarter and more capable and harder working than they actually are, because if you perceive them that way, their stocks go up. And I think that's why it bothers me so much, because I kind of know what it's like to be that black sheep. I know what it's like for when I worked at my job, and even though I had my problems, I wasn't the cause of every problem. And my former bosses were very quick and very willing to find a correlation in my actions and the problems that they were having. Because I hurt their feelings. And I know what it's like for people to demonize you and to use your mistakes as a justification for their feelings. You know, I like to say this, like, if you have like anger issues, right? Like I had anger issues for a long time. And part of getting angry is you're not really mature enough to handle the situation in front of you. And I still have my moments where I get overwhelmed and I get a little angry. But people get angry. And for me, I think the reason why I wasn't ever able to handle it well was because every time I got angry about something, it was looked at as this terrible thing. And it was looked at as much worse than it actually was. It was looked at as verification for the rest of the flaws that people saw in me. And it was looked at as this great moral failing, as if I am not allowed to be human. And I think we forget that we have this saying that I'm only human because we're supposed to afford ourselves some of these mistakes. And I think that we present ourselves in such a way so consistently that mistakes are and wrongdoings and things that you haven't necessarily done correctly just kind of linger with you for the rest of your life. And it gets to a point to where it almost doesn't become useful or worth your time to improve your situation from how much people are willing to dismiss you. You know, if you get angry, or if you have if you're a little bit easier to get frustrated, people very quickly dismiss your frustrations. If you get sad a lot, people are very quickly to dismiss your sadness, even if you have a legitimate reason. If you struggle a lot, even though some of your struggles might be your own fault, some of it may not be. Some of it might be because when you're poor, things can kind of cost more money. And it costs money to be poor. Your loans cost more money, and you have payday loans. We have these companies and organizations that take advantage of you when you don't have money, and they try to lure you into these money traps. And we have these used car salesmen that sell you cars at enticingly low prices, and you kind of find out that the car doesn't have everything it needs to drive, and it only works to get it off the lot. And when you're poor, you don't have the money to sue people when they wrong you. And so when you stay poor, it's very easy for people to point the finger at you and say, this is all your fault. And for a lot of cases and a lot of circumstances, it is. But I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that. And I think we try to simplify and reduce people to the personality traits that we're willing to accept them for. I was very worried about talking about politics because I was worried that any audience I would have would either be somebody who agreed with me and only fixate on the good parts of my personality, or disagree with me and fixate on the bad parts of my personality. It would be very easy for anybody to point to a character flaw that I have and try to associate it with a particular political party. If I'm impatient and young and I were conservative, then I could just simply be another red pill content guy. or vice versa. I could be a soy boy or whatever. Just random words that are used to dismiss a person and reduce them to what you want them to be, and turning them into a statistic and a point of argument for your points. And to be honest with you, I'm very worried about my near future. And the more that I learn, the more worried I am. I believe the American empire is slowly crumbling. I believe we have the resources and the capability to almost, but maybe not quite, create a little bit more of a utopia and put in a little bit more of an effort to make a better society. And I believe that most of the problems that people face and the way that we distribute our resources and how we approach our problems and whether or not we can solve our problems are purely political. I also believe that most people in today's day and age are not interested in solving problems. And I think that that is what holds us back. I think this is what causes people to have so much resentment, because either you are somebody who wants to solve problems and you get angry when people don't care because you view them as the problem, like me, or you are somebody who is so self-interested that you cannot help but get upset when people possibly point the finger at you or suggest that you could be doing more to help others, because that is not your prerogative. And I gotta tell you, I'm kind of disgusted. I'm disgusted at the food that is constantly being shoved down our throats. I'm disgusted at the fact that we value walking in public walking spaces so little that many of our roads don't have sidewalks, and it's not really that safe, and you're constantly next to running traffic to the point to where you kind of have to drive a car if you want to get anywhere safe. I'm kind of disgusted at the fact that everybody needs to have a vehicle and pay an absurd amount of money for a car to go to a couple of places that should honestly not even be necessary and should be treated more as a luxury. I'm disgusted with myself and how addictive this technology we have is. I'm disgusted that our tech companies have made it to where these devices are as addictive as possible. I don't like that my human brain is susceptible to being taken advantage of through highly addictive foods, highly addictive technology, highly polarizing news meant to elicit feelings through simplifying stories and advertising it in such a way as to a lack of investigation it forces you to think of it in a particular way that we have these artificial hurdles that aren't necessary, that can be circumvented, but regularly aren't. And it seems like things are put in place to prevent you from doing so. And yet you are blamed. It is impressive when a poor person pulls them out of poverty, because it is extremely difficult. The amount of expenses you probably have, the lack of job opportunities you have. If you've applied to a job recently and you gotten it, how the fuck did you do it? I mean, seriously. Every fucking job position has like 300 fucking people applying for it, or so they say. We have fake job postings, and we have such nitpicky interview processes that like anything can disqualify you for a job nowadays. We have jobs that require a bachelor's degree that don't even pay you $20 an hour. And it seems to me that if you look at society, you take a step back, people are almost always given their options as they go through life. If you are really good in school, you might be able to go to a nice college, but you may not be able to afford a nice college. And it seems as though money is the limiting factor of success. If you want to save money and not go to college, you are actively limiting your future job prospects. If you cannot afford to take the risk to go to college and not have a job afterwards, it may be in your best interest not to go, because you might be having another debt over your head that you'll be struggling to pay with the rest of your life because you were unable to find a job with a particular degree. And it seems so simple. It seems very simple. Use the money to solve some of these problems. Use the vast amounts of wealth that we have amassed as a nation and try to solve some of these problems. But it's not that simple. People don't want problems to be solved. People don't even want school kids to have lunch. People think that school kids should have to pay for it. And that if a family couldn't afford to feed their kids lunch, then that's a failure on the family, and that we should make their lives harder because the taxpayers can't afford the extra $5 a kid. People get so mad at the prospect of taxes, but while they use the benefits of those taxes, will complain and say we shouldn't have them and that we shouldn't have taxes. People will say things like they want peace and they want people to be treated fairly, and they're not really prejudiced because that's what they think they're supposed to say. And by doing so, they don't confront their own personal problems. People will say things and not actually mean it, and people will say things and mean it, and it'll just outright be the most despicable shit you'll ever hear in your life. I thought about the next book I was going to write, because the one I'm currently on, I'm on chapter 3. I don't know if I'm on my final draft yet. I'm on my third draft, editing it, trying to make sure that it's bearable to read. And the next one I thought about writing was going to be a political book. And it seems to me that the paradigm in politics, because I've tried to stay up with it, we're just openly talking about groups of people like they're not even people. And that's very concerning to me. And I shouldn't have to make a political statement or affiliate with a political party or demonize anybody to ask, what the fuck is wrong with us? We buy 60, 70, 80, sometimes $120,000 trucks and sit in them on our phones, completely disconnected from the rest of the world, and drive around and comment on everything that we see as if we know everything, and without having conversation, talk about other people's opinions. And then because we're imprinting our opinions or what we think about their opinions in that conversation that's very one-sided, we strawman them to prove them wrong, and then we post it on the internet, and then everybody just kind of pats you on the back for agreeing with them or yells at you for disagreeing with them. And I have a hard time accepting the idea that I'm just immature, because I feel as though we're becoming less mature as a nation. There's a reason why I say that I feel no sense of honor or duty. And the truth is, I want to have that feeling, but I feel like any efforts I could have to possibly help make a movement, make a change, running for office would just be futile. Because our politicians and our political conversations have turned into overly simplistic and unintelligible dribble. It's almost like you have to dumb yourself down to talk with people about the world's problems to try to solve them. But because you have to do that, you're not able to actually offer solutions to problems. And I want to be with people and around people that try to solve problems, but you can't. Because everything's politicized. Everything's a conspiracy. 60, 70 years ago, the polio vaccine was invented and saved people's lives. And it was advertised as such. And it was the child crippling disease polio will be a thing of the past with the new polio vaccine. It was a miracle. And then now we have COVID vaccines, and every time somebody kind of sort of maybe has a heart issue, it couldn't be from the cigarettes or the food and the trans fats and the fucking saturated fats and the copious amounts of caffeine or nicotine that our society consumes nowadays. No, it's the COVID vaccines. Because if I drop dead of a heart attack right now, it's not, oh, he drank 400 milligrams of caffeine every single fucking day and sometimes was sedentary, and then when he exercised too much, so he just kind of put too much of a strain on his heart. No, he got vaccinated. That's why he got dizzy. That's why he got dizzy. That's why he had heart disease. Because I want there to be a correlation, so I'm going to believe that there's a correlation. And people believe it even though there's not any evidence for it, because people lie about the evidence. People believe in the flat earth now. That a significant portion of the population believes in it. Because they want to. Because they have to believe in conspiracy. But anything that even remotely suggests a conspiracy or a wrongdoing from a politician or a celebrity or some sort of online figure that they like, well, it's offensive to them. It offends them even if you're not talking about them directly. Because people identify with their opinions so much that they get offended. I feel like we're becoming dumber. But we're not. Because when you listen to people talk and when you listen to the issues, there are more people in each area of expertise and study that says more intelligible things than I could. I think of myself as a smart person, and when I think that I understand something, I find normal people now, everyday people who have something smarter to say about it. But it's like the conversation just is through so many screens that you can't even have a conversation. It's just a giant game of telephone where people just want to reinforce their shitty ideas. And because we're reinforcing our shitty ideas, we have no ideas. I watched something that scared me today because people keep talking about artificial intelligence and AI. I say and AI, they're both the same thing. And we keep talking about a utopia of people and problems being taken care of and all sorts of fun stuff because of these great robots and this great technology. But I don't believe it. I don't believe that we'll do that. I don't believe that if we had a clear solution to every problem right now, I don't believe that if somebody came forward and said, I have the solution to world hunger right here, and through every honest, scientific, empirical metric, it was proven to be true, that we would ever implement it, even if it was easy, even if it took little to no effort, even if the funding was cheaper, even if it was cheaper than what we were doing now. I don't know, because we, right now, are okay with things like homelessness being illegal. How the fuck do you make homelessness? It's illegal to not have something? Really? I can kind of understand that with car insurance. Not really with health insurance, but whatever. That's a separate conversation. But not having a house? We're not going to give you houses or a place to live. We're not going to pay for it. If we find you homeless, we're going to arrest you and put you in jail where you'll have a place to live. And then we're going to convict you, and then you'll get released only to repeat the cycle over and over again. Because the financial strain on the justice system is not an expense that we're going to question, but the financial strain on building a place for people to stay, or homeless shelters, or soup kitchens, well, that's something we can't really afford. And it's like we're purposefully thinking about problems just enough to confirm our own opinions. And it's like we're so egotistical. Like we don't even know how to communicate our ideas outside of our own bubbles. And even if we did, people outside of our own bubbles are so ready to criticize anything that comes from a bubble that they don't like, that they come pre-prepared with all of these logical arguments and fallacies and preset ideas that they have been conditioned to think, to immediately dismiss it. And I think I'm cynical because I'm not old enough to not care and to let the human species fail. I watched a lot of George Carlin, and he said that he was a lot happier when he stepped back, and he said this is just one big failed experiment, and one day the meteor will come and take us out, and it'll be the Earth getting rid of one minor nuisance. And while I don't disagree with him, I am still a human. It's not a crime to have empathy. I mean, it shouldn't be, but some people argue that. I watched a video where a woman tried to explain, a Christian woman tried to explain the sin of empathy. Because caring about poor people and homeless people and people from countries that don't speak the same language as you is now a sin. Apparently. And that terrifies me. It terrifies me that a grown-ass person can think that and not spend a couple of seconds to think about it and go, I sound like a fucking evil person right now. That's some pretty heinous fucking shit that I just fucking thought. Wow, that's a shitty fucking thing to think. Maybe it's because I've had to confront people so much that I've had to hear every criticism anybody has ever had of me whenever I confronted them about their problems. Maybe that was the benefit of my last job. I don't know. Maybe that's why I had it. Maybe there was a grand plan, and in that plan, that entire job was to teach me humility and the notion of listening to my own criticism and people's criticism about me, because sometimes there's grains of truth in what people say about you. And while they might say it more harshly, there might be some nuggets of truth that you can use to help improve your own situation. Maybe not. I don't believe in that stuff. But hey, it's nice to think. But there's plenty of times, because of those experiences, where I say something, and especially if I see a reaction from other people, because I try to tell people to their faces what I'm thinking. And I don't really hide what I'm thinking most of the time. I'm a fairly blunt person. And when they have certain reactions, I try to pick up on their reactions, and I try to think about it, and I'm like, now that I thought about this, I really sound like a fucking asshole right now. I really sound like a fucking dickhead. I sound like a know-it-all. I'm really steering this conversation in a direction that this person doesn't really want to have. And I'm kind of pushing this person into a conversation they don't want to have. I should probably shut up. Because now I'm just being a little bit of an ass. Hey, now that I'm saying this out loud, my ideas don't sound quite as good as I thought they did. Hey, now that I'm saying this out loud, I don't sound as smart as I think I am. Hey, now that this person asked me a question about this, I realized I don't have a good answer for it because I have actually never learned about it. Perhaps I should either shut up, admit that I don't know what I'm doing, or just fucking research it. But people don't have that voice in their head. Maybe they never did. Maybe this is just a human flaw that I am exaggerating because I see it, and I think it's a very modern issue. But I honestly believe that our social media is making it worse. I think that what should be a medium of exchanging information and making the average person smarter has become a means of distributing misinformation, conspiracy theories, ones that don't even make any sense, and convincing people of their own stupidity. And it kind of saddens me